Well, Americans are feeling pretty optimistic about their financial picture. According to a survey from H&R Block, 2 in 3 Americans on average expect to have greater economic opportunities than their parents, and that includes 70% of Gen Z. Here with the details, we've got Curtis Campbell, H&R Block's president of Global Consumer Tax. Curtis, good to have you here on the program. Let's start with an overview. According to the survey, why are Americans optimistic?
Brad, good to see you again. So a couple things. I'll highlight 2 points. Specifically, optimism is high across income levels and generations because wages are outpacing inflation. And you mentioned this, each generation feels better off than the last. The second piece I think is really important. There's a lot of buzz about rising costs and inflation. Debt's the real threat to American prosperity. Credit card debt and student loans feel unmanageable for most generations, especially Gen X, just like me, keeping a keen eye on trying to drive up their savings and paying off loans. I remember, Brad, my wife and I struggled with both undergrad and grad school debt for many, many years. So the struggle is real.
Yeah, no, we feel that. Something that came up in the survey was side hustles. And I was particularly interested in this part of the survey because it seems like we're leaning more and more towards an environment where people are understanding and appreciating the value of having multiple streams of income here. So what did you find here as part of this survey?
It's really interesting. The side hustle thing has become increasingly more popular. And we expect that trend to continue to grow. In the data that we looked at, Gen Z, a lot of them opt for creative, new ways to create income, especially in the way that they prioritize home buying, better health and wellness, and travel. It was really interesting. The number one side hustle across all age groups was answering surveys, followed by driving for an app like Uber and Lyft, and then testing and reviewing products. It's really interesting.
I also want to focus in here on Gen Z. I mean, already contributing to the workforce. Can we talk about how they are viewing financial success and what that's being measured on?
Yeah, it's a couple things. Gen Z, it's really interesting. We found that Gen Z is more innovative and financially savvy than most people might expect. This group is changing jobs at unprecedented rates, primarily to increase their salary. This group's also, they're masters of the side hustle, Brad, earning more by starting new businesses and following their passions, and they're investing in really cool and interesting ways.
And so with that in mind, for those of us who are, aspirational energy, Gen Z, if you will, how can we ensure that we are also deploying our time correctly to, be more ingenuitous about where we are kind of creating some of these side hustle opportunities and making sure that it's accelerating some of our retirement goals as well?
Well, I think there are a couple things to keep in mind as people tap into just more side hustles and things of that nature. Just keep in mind, a lot of these things have impacts to your taxes. So that's the number one thing. Just keep that in mind. They're both benefits and they're consequences. So I think the most obvious impact is as you take on more side hustles, it has the opportunity to increase your tax rate if your job change pushes you into a higher tax bracket. I think there are a lot of other tax benefits that may be less obvious, including potential job search and moving expenses and whatnot. What I will say, Brad, is H&R Block, we recommend checking your W-4 as you do pick up more side hustles and begin potentially new jobs. We provide an easy tool to enable consumers to see how these W-4 changes can impact their taxes.
Even as you think out to the future, a lot of Americans are trying to understand what type of policy changes may come in 2025. I wonder what you're advising clients right now who are trying to get ahead of their own tax planning and best configure their own both income, their payments that they're making, and any type of financial considerations going into some of those changes.
I think about a couple of things. Oftentimes people think that taxes are a retrospective view. I would encourage people to think about taxes proactively. There are many things that we can do as consumers to get prepared for taxes. You mentioned one in an earlier session, thinking about charitable contributions, right? Those can absolutely help so many people tax-wise, and they can help society as well. Thinking about contributing maybe a little bit more to your 401k could also be a thing that impacts you, not just in the near term from a tax perspective, but long term when you consider your retirement.
Curtis Campbell, H&R Block, president of Global Consumer Tax. Curtis, thanks so much for taking the time here with us today. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Brad.